like to call this meeting to order for the Geneva Historic Preservation Commission for Tuesday, July 26, 2019. 16. July 16th, 2019. Can you call the roll, please?
Sure. Hamilton. Hiller.
Here.
Solomon.
Here.
Stazen. Zinke. Here. Warner. Chairman Zelmer.
Here.
You have a quorum?
Great, thank you. Okay. First item, third item on our agenda is approval of the meeting minutes for June 18th, 2019. Does anyone have any additions / revisions to those? Carolyn?
No, I do not.
Al?
Nope. Move to approve
abstain.
minutes of June 18th.
Okay, can you get a second?
I'll second.
Okay, all in favor? Or-
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. And Mr. Stazen abstain, or, I'm sorry, Solomon abstains.
It's been a long time.
Yes, it has.
Can you
Okay.
say George S?
I could say George S., but it wouldn't be very specific.
Wouldn't work.
Okay, close enough.
Okay. The first, we have 3 building permit review applications. The first is 327 South 4th Street, the Larrabee House. Take it away, Mr. Lambert. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman Zelmer
You mocked.
and Commissioners. The case 327 South 4th Street is the Larrabee House owned by St. Mark's Church. You've seen this come before us a couple of times now. This was granted approvals under a PUD and then has come back to us with a request for some modifications to the planned unit development project. By way of notice of where the project is, it is in the Central Geneva Historic District, which is listed in the National Register of Historic Places, and it is in the southern half of our local Geneva Historic District. The building is currently identified as a significant building within our historic district. I'm not going to go through all the history because you've seen it before, but I do just want to let you know if you need these slides or at any time want to reference them. I have included some images from previous meetings. So this is again the earliest view of the block. The house, which was built in the 1850s, is shown here in this 1869 bird's eye map at the far end of the block from the actual historic chapel. Again, just a close-up view of it. The house is known as the Larrabee House for William M. Larrabee, who was the treasurer of the Galena and Chicago Union Railroad, who came to Geneva in 1854 and built this house within a year of his arrival here at the corner of 4th and Fulton Streets. The house was moved about 14 years ago, or not 14 years ago, it was moved several years ago, about 14 feet to the southwest on the lot, but still is on the original lot that it was located. The house bears some similarities to the Parker Turner house, which you're familiar with at 113 Fulton Street. Has some of the same characteristics of the Italianate bracketed eave. So we have a suspicion that the house may have been constructed by Clark and Long, early pioneer carpenters in the city. We don't have a lot of clear early photographs of the house to use as reference. This is one of the earliest views dated in 1900, but again, the house is pretty obscured and is far in the background. We do have several from the early 20th century. This view from 1925, and this view also from 1925. And this is pretty much as the building exists today without the far eastern additions that were done in the after 1970, 1980. So this shows the house after it was remodeled with the significant bay windows added to it and some of the windows altered to include leaded glass sash or transoms. Again, the picture from 1957 that shows it much as it looked before the renovation started. So as I said, this was part of a planned unit development. As you're aware, this is part of a process to connect the building to the church and convert the building for assembly use and an apartment on the second floor. So part of that is to restore certain elements and rehab the other elements of the building. So these were the renderings that were provided with the proposed new addition that's been framed up now if you've been by the property. We have considered window replacement several times here in front of the commission since I've been here, and I've included a few images of pictures or images of projects that we have actually approved for window replacement as a kind of a reference to compare conditions. So these were from a particular project not far from this, the Larrabee house. So the existing condition of the windows, you've received an extensive report as part of your packet. I also have it in hard copy here, a very nice binder that was put together by the church for you. So that's here for reference. But also on July 10th, I met Mike Sweeney, who will be making the presentation this night for the church. Will be making the presentation tonight for the church. And I wanted to just note some things that I identified when I was walking through with Mr. Sweeney. The typical sash conditions at Larrabee House appear to be excellent to good condition. That doesn't mean that every one of them is excellent or good, but overall, compared to windows we've seen, they kind of rank in the excellent to good condition. However, a lot of the windows are painted shut, so the sash couldn't be really viewed fully to see what condition they really are in. However, the windows also vary in the types of counterweight systems. Some have rope pulleys and some are chain pulleys, so there's obviously several generations of different types of windows in the Larrabee house. There are also several leaded glass windows that were put in during that 1920s, 19-teens, 1920s remodeling. And then in the windows that I was able to get access to, I didn't find a whole lot of punkiness or rot, although there is some, and I'll let Mr. Sweeney kind of walk you through some of that. But by and large, the windows were not literally falling apart, but that's just part of an assessment. The typical bottom rails of the windows at the Larrabee house really ranked more good to fair, with a few in the poor condition and some in the excellent condition. So these are some samples of some of the conditions you would see of the windows. The upper middle one is probably one of the worst cases. You can see the actual bottom rail has actually dropped from the side stiles because of rot in the windows. Also, the lower right shows some of the most deteriorated conditions where part of the stile, the side stile, and the bottom rail have rotted and the joint has begun to disintegrate. The typical jams that I could identify and look at, both looking at the exposed side as well as some of the windows that have been removed or some of the windows that have been exposed. Almost all the windows have been exposed at this point on the interior. The jams that I could look at seem to be overall in excellent to good condition, although there are some that are in fair condition. And again, I'll let Mr. Sweeney go through specific windows, or if you have specific windows after looking through the items in your agenda packet. Leaded glass windows, in looking at them, I also rated them excellent to fair. The glass itself is in excellent condition. The lead work and the actual condition of them, and I'll talk a little bit more about that, is really, some of it's in very fair and actually bordering on poor condition compared to other windows we've looked at here. And I'll explain why that is, because there are some very important things to look at. And then the typical sill conditions of the Larrabee house, I would say, are generally poor, and that's because the sills themselves were basically just knocked off in the remodeling and broken. You can see most of the interior sills have exposed new wood, bright wood, and that's where literally the interior sill was just broken off as part of the current remodeling. However, there was one or two exterior sills that I could see that had some visible rot and damage to them in very localized damage. And again, I know Mr. Sweeney will address some of this as well. So in the Larrabee house on the west elevation, this is what it looks like currently. So you can see the porch is being reconstructed. And I wanted to bring a couple of things to your attention regarding the windows on the west facade, which is again the front or the primary facade of the building. The two pictures on the left are the windows that open up onto the front porch at the first floor. You can see with leveling the floor that the windows actually sit below the floor line today. And that was in part just to get the floors level in the building. You can see they go all the way to the floor, so those windows would need to be addressed to meet current code with tempered glass at a minimum. The windows to the right on the image here are actually the 3 windows on the second floor, and those windows are actually probably the most compromised in the building, because at some point somebody tried to retrofit those with those 1940s, 1950s metal runners, and so they actually routed out the sash, which has led to some compromised integrity in those sash, and also some compromised integrity on the jamb to fit those metal runners. And that's on all 3 of the second floor windows that face 4th Street.
Excuse me, Michael.
Yes.
Would you happen to know what the numbers are for those 3 windows? 'Cause all the windows have numbers nowadays.
Yes, I didn't reference them here, so I would have to look those up, but
Okay, well-
I can look those up as we go.
Okay, thank you.
I'm sure Mr. Sweeney has them memorized, so he's probably going to answer those quicker. So again, just the view from the northwest, again, looking at the windows and the work, again, the aluminum siding has been removed from the house. The southwest corner, again, the south facade is the one that's been altered most significantly since the beginning of the 20th century, with the large fixed window on, it's actually not a fixed window, it actually does rise a little bit. The large window with the leaded transom at the left side of the south elevation, and then the 2 bay windows. And at the very far end, the window's been removed, but a small casement window was put in where there was a porch, and that was expanded into a kitchen at some point. So the bay windows have been exposed as well, and that reveals some other interesting issues. Again, looking at the south elevation, again, you can see the first floor windows have been significantly altered. This is the bay window before the aluminum siding was removed. This was a picture that was submitted in some of the initial work from the initial submittals from the applicant. And you notice it's got this very elaborate, deep detail under this bay window, making an oriel window. It's been exposed now on both windows, and you can see that the furthest one to the left is just standard double hung windows in that opening, but the one to the right has the leaded glass transoms in it. What's significant about this is that with the uncovering of the aluminum and actually looking at that, you can see some of the deterioration that's occurred in the bay windows. They've actually dropped at the center window. And I'll show a little bit of that. And that has led to an issue not only for the historic windows, but if you approve replacement windows, the replacement windows would also have to be built either custom to match that, or the bay window has to be corrected. So this was, again, a picture that was submitted in the May 28th submittals. It doesn't really show too much, but this was one of the pictures that was shown at that time, indicating that the leaded glass windows needed to be replaced. And there was a proposal at that time to replace them with new leaded glass windows. If you've read the documentation, they're now going to restore those windows. I want to go through why. If you look at this, this picture is not distorted. The lead glass upper sash are failing because they're actually taking on load because the bay window is settling. And so the leaded glass is not strong, and so it's deforming the leaded glass in the sash. So again, it's my opinion and what have you, that whether these are restored or whether a new window is put in there, the structural condition of the bay window needs to be addressed before any window is replaced back in there. Here you can see that these windows, again, the bay windows operate off of a chain and pulley rather than a rope and pulley. And again, there's at least 3 different window systems in the building. So this is, again, one reason why we ask for these window surveys, because it really does tell a little bit about the story of how these buildings have evolved over time. So again, here's some pictures of the windows. You can see, especially in the lower two right windows, you can see how much deformation there is in the leaded glass. Again, that's not a problem with the picture. That's actually what the glass is doing from taking on load. And the bay windows also compromise some because if you look at the upper right window, someone at some time put a large amount of plaster wash or light cement wash in the bottom of that bay where the molding is. And that's actually leading to some deformation. So this is all cement plaster that's been plastered onto the bottom of that belly of the oriel window. And so that's adding some weight to the window as well. So again, I think that part of any window restoration needs to address how those bays are made structurally sound before any windows are put in, because even new windows would start failing after some time. Just to give you an example or show you how much it sagged, this is a graphic. I went from point to point across the bay window, and you can see at the center how much it's dropped. And that's, again, indicating the kind of load that's being transferred to those leaded glass windows. Again, another example. When I first looked at this, I thought that the bottom of the sash had been cut off to accommodate the slope to the window, but they're actually not sealing all the way. And when the aluminum was in there, it kind of hid that. But the sash is still level, but the window has dropped, and so they're not making contact with the sill any longer. And again, looking at the other side of that same bay window, you can see the difference between where the sill is at and where the window in its closed position is hitting. So there's about a half-inch gap at the far side of the window where it will not meet with the sill anymore. And again, that's because of the falling of the sash. So there were some things that you had requested at the last meeting from the applicant. I think most of that has been provided in the submitted documentation. Mr. Sweeney, I know, has more information this evening. But a couple of things that are not in here, but I think will be answered tonight, hopefully, is what was the scope of work provided for each window by Historic Home and Window. That was one of the things that you were asking about instead of the blanket discussion. I did put a call into Historic Home and Window Restoration at the request of the commissioners, and was told that they were just asked for a blanket restoration cost, and that's what they gave, was a not per window, but an overall fee, which is what you saw in the documentation. The other items that were being asked for were the total replacement cost for each window. We had an estimate for the new windows, but we did not have all the costs associated with the removal of the existing windows, removal of exterior, interior casing and trim, opening modification for replacement stock windows. Again, it's unclear to me still in the documentation. It looks like they're the stock units from Marvin, not custom to each opening, so that would mean there would be some kind of adjustment to the jamb and sill in the opening, if that's the case, or potentially that would be the case. What the cost was for the installation of the replacement stock window, as well as the replacement of exterior and interior casing and trim, and the sealant of the exterior perimeter of the window installed. The items that staff had requested, and this was just recent, so Mr. Sweeney may have this tonight, is the details and costs of structural reinforcement of the bay windows. Again, that would be essential whether the windows are restored or new. And then what cost savings there were, if any, based on the details for repair and restoration of selected windows. As I said, all the leaded glass windows now are proposed to be restored rather than be replaced with new windows. So again, those might be some of the questions the commissioners may have this evening. Lastly, as part of the fenestration package, we have also received a request to replace the existing front door at the Larrabee house. This picture from 1957 clearly shows that the original door was a central door with flanking side lights and a transom. However, this is not the original door when you look at historic pictures. The doorway is probably original, but the door itself does not appear to be original. It's a multi-panel door. So what's been replaced in the in the building is an offset door with a stock side light and a stock transom that doesn't have any historic relationship to the original building. This is the door that's been taken out. So it's been cut out of the wall and is sitting inside the house now. This is from the interior. The door is probably pretty similar to what would have been on the building originally, but the transom and side light arrangement certainly is not. What's been submitted and proposed on the left is a sketch for a Marvin window showing 3 divided transom lights and 3 divided side lights flanking the door. On the right is my recommendation to the commission to consider based on looking at the historic photographs where there were 4 transom lights and then shorter side lights and panels that would have matched the lower panels of the door. Again, we don't have a whole lot of detail on this, this door, but we are provided with information from Mr. Silvestri that the transoms would be divided with 5/8 inch wide muttons with dark bronze spacer bars that would comply with our window policy. So with that, that's my brief introduction to this complicated.
Did the doors show it all in the 1925 or 27 pictures?
That's where this is coming from. This is the detail in 1925, and there's a glass multi-light storm door on the front, and when you blow it up large enough, it looks like it's an 8-panel door of 4 equal panels is what it looks like behind the door. So again, I don't believe that's an original door either.
Okay. Thank you.
So are there other questions from me? Otherwise, I'd like to turn it over to Mr. Sweeney, who understands all the windows in much greater detail than I do. So, Mr. Sweeney?
Those windows are UL 10, 11, and 12.
Okay.
Facing west.
I knew you'd have those. So I can take this away. This is a highlighter.
Got it?
And I'll get this out. And then to go forward or backward, any window would be these.
Okay.
And if you want the other one, it just takes me a second to load it up.
Okay. What you've done so far is presented a good overall view of it, that's for sure. Hi, my name is Mike Sweeney. I'm a resident of Geneva. I'm also a member of St. Mark's. I've been a builder for over 40 years. I've built multiple homes here in the town. Have done multiple major room additions. I also had completed a project back about 11 years ago or so at 521 Campbell Street that you were nice enough to award me a certificate of appreciation for historic preservation, which I still hang on my wall. And what we're trying to accomplish is to get a better sense of showing you the condition of the existing windows, also showing you kind of the need to, we obviously need to preserve the leaded glass windows, restore them, remake them new if we can. And what we would like to be able to do is to place these leaded glass into a new frame that would match the new frames that we would have with the new Marvin windows or Colby windows. There are 2 companies that can absolutely duplicate the exterior of the existing windows within micro inches, 1/8 inches or so. Same width of casing on the exterior, same sill style, but also then that becomes, these would be wood. The window itself would be Marvin clad with the same kind of exterior finish that the new casings would have that we would be putting on the exterior of the window. And the biggest part of this is to get the windows up to also some type of an efficiency that we would like to do, because we do not kind of feel that putting storm windows over the existing restored windows would really do much for the look of the existing windows. So we did an extensive search, myself, Bill Spring, and my wife. She was the doer behind most of the presentation that you see in the books that you have. Without her, we wouldn't be here tonight. And I do have the notes as far as the costs that are broken out here. Michael is right. I mean, they're not identified per window. They're more just looked at from a cost standpoint of size of the window. That is where he has come up with those particular costs. We had also a quote from the carpenter contractor. You don't have that copy, but I have a set of these that I'm going to leave here with you that I will give to Mike right now, so you have it. Carpenter quote for the removal, and this is also the, I think you already have that. So that's all of yours. The cost to remove and reset the new windows is approximately $3,500. That's what his quote has. It's on the sheet there that I gave Michael. And I know that might sound a little bit low, but just when we take the older windows out, this is not when we restore them, but when we would take the older windows out, they come out fairly quickly with Sawzall and whatever it might take to do that. And the quote for reinstalling the new windows is pretty basic. I mean, it's just mostly, an hour, 2 hours max per window for the carpenters to do that. So I guess the next step would be, if you have some questions and things that you might like to ask me, I'd be more than willing to that, or go through some of the other windows that is in the file. And I came up with approximately 15 windows that are probably need to definitely be new. I mean, they just can't be restored. If you'd like to just take a quick look. If you want to pass this around.
Sure.
Whatever. This is one of the windows that was on the front of the lower front of the house, that when we took the aluminum capping off, that's what was there. And it kind of pretty much shows what general condition of the window is. This particular window that we brought with us tonight is not to be put back. It was part of it was a window that was facing the church that is now part of the new entryway that is adjoining both buildings. So you're more than welcome to take a look at it.
So this was a west,
This is
was
part,
actually this was a west-facing window, yes.
One of the full-length ones.
oh, okay.
One of
And the ones above that actually probably were the worst ones, is that right? Am I
Those are
correct?
the aluminum track ones.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Second.
okay.
Now, they're not all that bad, but they're not, there might be some that are worse, until we get into the point where we actually remove them. And that's one of the hardest things to do with these windows, is to get them out without doing further damage to them.
Well, no, actually, I appreciate that you brought that in. One of my concerns was that, looking at your report, everything was I counted 31 windows that had rot, and every one of them needed to be replaced, and I thought that's just too much,
I guess my difference is in the eye of the beholder.
Yeah, no, I was just amazed that they all needed to be replaced. I understood that, but in the
Excuse me,
past,
Mr. Can you go to the microphone because we are recording, just so we can hear everything? Thank you, I'm sorry.
In the past, we want consistency in the house. I mean,
Sure.
I don't want you to have to restore half the windows and replace half the windows. We kind of like to probably have some kind of consistency there. But and I think in the past we've seen that where someone comes in and says more than 50% of the windows are broken or damaged, and has
Sure, I
verifiable
understand that.
proof of that, and we say, okay, then the windows it's justifiable. So I'm glad that you've said that some of them actually are not in that bad a shape, because I was finding that hard to believe. Oh, I did have one question too about just your, cracked and damaged due to storm windows. What was that, nail holes or?
Well, if you, Nancy, now this is the jam is taken off from our occasional window. This is a stop,
Okay,
and, sorry, this is a stop, and it is the inner lining that's on top of the jam. And when storm windows are installed, they typically, they're measured, they fit each window, they come out, and when they install them, they do it the quickest and easiest way. They just take a electric cordless screwdriver and screw without tapping the wood, and when they put these screws in, the holes the frame in, it cracks these stops.
Okay.
And when they crack, that does two things. It lets water, seep in over a period of time, and it also will cause failure of, because this is the stop that the window is going up and down in on the inside of the stop that's on the exterior where this is attached. And the other problem that we've had, that we've really identified also, is the fact that when the cladding of the windows was done, putting the aluminum caps over it, it was a great, that was the condition of the windows before they put the caps on. But the only thing is, they used nails to face nail the cap, anchor it, and wherever they did it. And so that's led also to failure of the existing frame and trim boards on the outside.
Okay, so they're making holes for the water.
Pardon me?
They were making holes for the water.
Absolutely they were, yeah. And they also caulked the bottom where the vertical capping comes down and meets the sill, and that's probably the biggest cause of the damage to the sills. Was here they've got these caulked joints where water is, over a period of time, will seep into it, and it stays there because it doesn't have a chance to drain out, and it just collects, and that's what caused the bottom of that one piece that I had brought in. And that's, whenever that was done, I think that was done recited it back in the 70s or 80s, something like that, after they moved the house. And, it's unfortunate that whoever did it, it might have looked nice, but they didn't really do it correctly. So we're suffering from that now. So.
Okay.
George, any questions you have?
No, I mean, I think, when going through the report, it was quite extensive and detailed, which is kind of what we originally requested in the beginning. So it definitely helped to open up a few eyes as to exactly what the situation is.
There seems to be a little bit of a disconnect between your quality, or your assessment of the windows and Mr. Lambert's assessment of the windows.
I'm giving kind of a general, I didn't go window by window, I did look at each window, but again, Mr. Sweeney has spent a lot more time on the site than I have. I was there about 90 minutes, so not that long of a time to look at 33 windows. Again, looked at the ones that we could easily access and I'm trying to give you kind of the overview, and he went window by window. Again, I think the biggest thing that I noted was there's at least 3 generations of windows in the building. They all have, each era or each class of windows has about the same condition issues. So depending on which, if say class 1 has 10 windows, those 10 windows all have the same kind of deterioration issues with them. The class 2 have a different level, and the class 3, the later ones, have a different issue. So again, I don't think the jams are as serious as maybe Mr. Sweeney believes, because again, I think we've seen repairs made with epoxies and what have you, but when you start looking at the sash and some of those details, even the sash that I rate as excellent, still, that did not mean they were perfect.
They were repairable.
Right. So that's why I said mine's kind of the cursory overview level, letting the church do the explanation on the individual level. I will make one note while I have the microphone. I did the quick math while you were talking. Just curious, when you put the numbers together, the difference between the proposed new window or the replacement windows and the restoration is about $19,224, which is about the difference, which is about the same number as the proposal for the storms, which is $19,250. So you're within $26. So my point being there is that the window units are about the same cost, but by doing the replacement windows, they are not requiring the storm windows, which is that additional cost. So just kind of, sometimes that question's been asked on other window replacement, what is the actual window unit cost? And they're actually about comparable, just so you know.
Michael, these new interior storms that I see on Bissell House and in various magazines. How expensive are those? Do you have any idea?
They go by the window size. There's different companies and different attachment methods, so I can't give you a general cost. It really goes by the window size.
I see, okay.
And again, those are interior storms are an excellent type of storm window if you are not planning ever to open your windows. They're easily removed for once or twice a year to do cleaning or what have you, but most of them are a pretty strong seal, whether they're by tension or whether they're by magnetic tape. They're designed to be an airtight seal, so it does take a little bit of effort to get those off to do window maintenance.
Well, I notice generally speaking with friends that I have, that in our house, we're not air conditioning people, so we open our windows and we have the screens open all the time. But most of our friends have the air conditioning on as soon as the furnace goes off, and their windows are never open. So I'm thinking that probably that's more a general statement for people nowadays, that their windows never open. I have a question about the numbers. I'm confused somewhat. The Marvin replacement estimate, I believe it says it's for 35 windows. And on your general information form that you gave us, you said there are 33 windows. And then the next thing that I'm confused about, I believe you said 15 windows cannot be restored.
Correct.
So if there are 35 windows, that means that 20 windows can be restored, if I'm doing the math properly.
Yes, probably.
Probably,
You know,
okay.
that's dependent upon still removing them without them completely
Yes,
falling apart. Because we didn't see this damage, like I say, until we actually started to, really look hard at it.
that's right, that's right.
I can add to it, maybe,
Right.
I think the 2 additional windows that you're referring to would be where the kitchen was, which was done to remodel 15, 18 years ago. So I think those are the 2 additional windows that.
Yeah. I actually think that from the May 28th presentation, the 2 windows that were referred to are the window that was proposed to be put on the north side, and the window that you haven't mentioned yet about opening up an existing area that had been a door that you would like to put a window in. In the May 28th presentation, those 2 were identified as being included in that 35.
I see, okay. All
We
right,
we do also have one window, for some reason I cannot find it. I think it's lower level 14 or something like that, 13. But it's actually it's already a replacement window. It's got a Marvin window stamp on it that has a date of, I think, August of 2000. So that was a double window, and that might not have been counted as 2 windows really, because.
I see, I see, okay. All right, so you're definitely, according to your estimate, you're definitely interested in 35 windows from Marvin, which will cost you about $34,000.
Correct.
Is that $34,000 and a few other dollars, is that including removing the existing windows and preparing the opening for the new windows and installing the new windows? Is that for all of that?
No, the removal is based on general rough framing, yanking them out type of thing. So the cost of the Marvin windows is actually just the cost of the windows. The labor to take out and to replace new is $3,500, which is part of that quote that I just gave to Mike.
Okay, so the $3,500 is to take out all the old windows and install the 35 new windows?
Correct.
Be $3,500,
Right.
okay. And with about 2 hours of labor per window, you were saying?
Something like that. yeah.
Something like that.
Some are smaller, some are easier to take out. Obviously, the ones on the lower level are pretty easy to take out, but the upper level, they take a little bit longer maybe.
Okay, all right. And then thinking about the leaded glass windows, I heard something about removing the glass and putting the glass into new frames?
Yes.
Okay. Is this part of the 35 windows from Marvin?
The labor and cost to do the leaded glass is not been established yet.
I see.
We have a shop down in Aurora that does that kind of work. Actually, just stained glass art shop that I actually took a course there one time years ago. And but anyway, that cost is yet to be decided
I see.
or determined. Let's put it that way.
I see.
And I have no idea what that would cost because there's different methods that you can take to flatten the glass, but in certain cases, you might be breaking some of those pieces of glass. And that glass that's there is not beveled, it's just a basic window glass. So I imagine whatever piece might become broken could be probably repaired. And then that sash, that glass piece could be then, the window itself could be placed in a new jamb or have the jamb milled, whatever it might be, put new weather stripping and what have you on it and, preserve it. So
Okay. So that's an additional cost to the 35,000 and some change.
yes,
For how many leaded glass windows?
6.
6?
To be fair, Commissioners, that would be an add to both numbers,
To
whether
both
it's
numbers.
restoration or new.
Okay. All right, so that's sort of a wash then, in other words. I see. Okay. And then as I'm looking through this, I'm seeing that some windows, like for example LL1, restore with conditions. What do you mean by conditions?
That's restore with conditions is the leaded glass part of it.
Oh, I see.
Yes.
I see. Okay, all right. Okay, so then that's LL1, LL2, LL3, and then LL4 is replace with new, but there's no leaded glass in that one. Okay. So then there must be 6 in here that say replace with conditions.
Correct.
Okay, all right. Okay, thank you.
Anything else, George?
There really isn't any altering of the openings. You said size-wise, there's only from the Marvin or whatever, they would be basically just a fraction of an inch size difference.
Yes.
So they're all custom sized, basically?
Well, the windows themselves are probably within an inch of the actual size. The exterior trim, we can mill that to match whatever space is there, taking the, once we take the windows out and putting the new trim on. That can be slightly trimmed as needed to
Adjusted,
fit the existing siding opening.
So you're going to be taking the existing trim comes off when you take out the window?
Right, because that trim is actually nailed to, it's like this. It's attached to the
Okay.
top, to all sides of the window, and that's what that is.
But the siding, we're still leaving the existing siding.
At this stage, yes.
Okay.
This is just an example.
Yeah.
We took this off just a few hours ago. And you can get it off, but you have to be very careful and pry the bottom, pry the middle, because you don't want to just snap it. So that's and I know from experience, I've, been doing carpentry work for basically all my life, that it's, again, when you have a piece of wood that's old, yes, some parts of it are very still firm and can be restored, but other parts of it, once they go, it's sort of, difficult to repair that. And the other thing, and we're not trying to, by any means, limit what we want to do by just saying, let's put all new windows in. This is a big project, not only for the church, but for the town. We want this to be, when people drive by it, we want them to understand it's a place to gather, a place to meet. We're going to have young people attending church service or Sunday school there. We have, and the goal is to, when somebody drives by this building and sees that it's St. Mark's, that it says we did take care in trying to preserve this, and to duplicate what is there the best that we possibly can.
Of the, on the west side, the west facade,
Yes?
those, the 3 upper levels and the 4 at the bottom, or how many there are at the bottom, I'm not sure.
Just, 2.
Two? Are those all considered part of the 15 that were to be
Yes.
replaced?
Yes.
Okay. Because sometimes we look at facade by facade,
Sure.
and that,
Yeah.
those seem to be the most prominent ones,
Well, exactly.
so.
Yeah, it's unfortunate what they did to the top ones, because they, by putting that aluminum balance, as I call it, because that's what they basically are, there's a spring-loaded hook that hooks onto the sash and helps you lift it up, and then when you lift it up, it stops so it doesn't come slamming down on you. But they routed out the edge of the sash to make it fit, and they also modified the jamb to make that piece of metal balance fit in that side. So it was sort of a stopgap method to try to help improve the weather stripping. And that's the other thing too, there's no weather stripping on any of these windows, there never really was. And over a period of time, the wear just on the sash side, you know, you lose a little bit of wood every time that, a fraction, tiny fraction, yes, not a lot, but over a period of, what do we say, these windows were probably 1920-ish, 25-ish, over a period of close to 100 years. I mean, they wear out and they get thinner and thinner and looser, and air comes pouring through. So.
We were also, you were going to discuss how you were going to solve the issue of the sagging bay window, or
Yes,
look at how that was going to.
We have, I haven't got it in writing yet, I just got it worked up today. It's about $1,500 per bay to straighten out. What we have to do is we have to remove the bottom trim boards that are under the bay gently. Reestablish, there must be something that they put in that goes from the bottom of the bay window to the edge of the foundation, some type of maybe hopefully 4x4s or what have you, that supports the bay. And that can then be, those braces can be taken off, we can jack it up, put new bracing in to get it back to level, because Mike is correct too, that you can't put a square new or even rebuilt window in without being able to, you know, attend to the problems of the bay. So and that's typically what we do when we build a bay these times. Also, there's another way to do it with a pulley and cable system. You actually run a cable up into the floor joist. You have a pulley vertically above the window. It goes down, hooks into between the spacing of the glass. I mean, the spacing of the windows, the interior trim piece, a little diagonal part that's in there. And you bolt it to the bottom side of the bay window, and then you tighten it up, and, you know, so that's 2 different ways to do that. But that definitely needs to be done. We'd be foolish not to repair that.
And when you take off you're going to put the siding that's underneath there back, that's the intent?
I would just say, since you brought that topic up, the second method is a more typical method to not have to repair all that, take all that trim off when you're doing restoration. It's a little more time consuming in a lot of ways to get the threaded cable down there, but often then you can use that pulley system to do it very slowly, so you're not having to remove and have the potential chance of cracking all that trim boards, taking those off. So a preferable way from a preservation standpoint, pure preservation, would be to do the pulley system to gently pull it back into square. Usually you have enough give in those when they've sagged to be able to do that. The other way is a much more invasive approach and much higher risk of damaging the historic trim and not being able to put that back. So
I agree. I think the cable method is a much better method.
Most of that stuff's going to be open at that point anyway, right?
Well, a good part of it, once we take the trim off the inside of the windows, we
Yeah,
got to
you're
do
gonna-
that anyway to be able to
Right.
get it back up. Without taking the trim off, you'll never be able to get it loose enough to
Yeah.
let it move. So, but that's a preferred way to do it, yes.
Yeah, but when you take the window out, and all that trim will be exposed at that point anyway.
Yes.
So, okay.
I think you made a good point. I mean, we generally we're more concerned with the street sides of the building. If that one whole side, we feel that those windows are compromised, I don't have too much of a problem with replacing those. You're saying somewhere around 40% of the windows are really beyond repair, is that what?
That's what I'm saying, yes.
Somewhere like that.
Yes.
And the others, are they on the Fulton Street side then, or?
Well, the ones that are in the best condition are the ones that are on the north side of the building, because they haven't
They're the ones that
been
are-
damaged due to sun and, what
Yeah.
have you.
Probably not as
We
much.
discovered that, when we were examining them, and if you see my comments there, those are the ones that, too bad that they're not a street there, because they are the ones that are in the best shape.
So the north side of the building, that is actually now a facade that is very easy to see.
Well, we have to walk up the sidewalk and,
Right. Right.
that's where the new entrance is at.
That's right, yes.
That's where also some of the miscount might have happened, because on the windows was there's some windows that were removed to be able to get the joining, we calling that space in there, just a new south entrance, I guess, but.
Yeah, some of those are being removed, right? I mean, there's that, well, that one is, but.
Yes, yeah, there's, I didn't get involved in this until
There was
just,
at least two lower ones that were.
Okay.
yeah.
Is there any possibility that you would be willing to repair the windows that are on the north side, since you're saying that they are the best ones? And you could repair those?
I'm saying we could probably repair, I don't know if we could repair all of them, but we could certainly try to repair some of them, and we'd have a better idea once we took the windows out. Again, it gets into the situation of how do we weatherproof the, storm window or what have you, how do we do that, because with the Marvin windows, we wouldn't have to have storm windows,
Yeah,
so.
I know.
But no, it would be, we could try, certainly.
It just feels, these are a lot of windows to replace. And it just feels that there must be some windows on the house that can be repaired. My commissioner members, any thoughts from other people about this?
I guess my point is unless, if the south side ones are in bad shape, which I would imagine they're probably in bad, I agree that they probably, and the west side ones aren't in great shape. Those are the two facades that would be important to me to make sure that you did it, because I see here, we usually only go up to the first break kind of anyway. So really, we're talking about one window there, right? Or is it,
Yes, we're
do we
talking
go to
about-
the bay? I mean, that, and I don't know where your addition, I guess that's the addition right there. So it comes in after that bay,
Correct. It's
or that
those,
L, if you will.
those four windows, basically, the two upper and the two lower on
Yeah.
that bump out. The other one that's on the porch, inside the porch, that's a leaded glass window there.
Okay,
And then the other window that's above is, I can't remember the number of the window, but, it wasn't that great. The other one that's on the sidewall there, that is in a new bathroom that has to be replaced because it's not tempered glass.
Oh.
And the tub was within a foot of the tub. And, I know the tempered glass is sort of an issue of, well, why does it have to be tempered, There never was before, but now we've got, and it's not the building department, I don't think it's it's the national building code that requires, it's a safety feature. that
yeah, it is. It
You
is.
don't want children up there and they're running around banging into it and, having it shatter on them. So it's significant and important, and it would become a liability for the church to have to worry about not having the correct glass in there.
Well, I personally, it's just a difficult situation all around. I mean, we are Preservation Commission, and, our charge is to sort of try to preserve the original. And, part of, one of the standards is to not create a false sense of history. In other words, Disney can build a house that looks like this, but it's still not an old house, And, but on the other hand, I think the Marvins will replicate it in a fair enough fashion that, you know, visually it won't be too impaired.
And we will be willing to provide you with, you know, documents from Marvin that has the exact, you know, specifications, size, and what have you on it. That-
And I would think, personally, anyway, I would vote for consistency rather than having some storms and some not. But
Yeah, I would kind of go with that too, in that I would rather have them and especially since we're down to, if it's the north facade, then I think consistency is part of it too.
I mean, people will see those windows when they
Oh,
walk.
I agree. I mean,
So,
but, did you,
Chairman Zelmer, I mean, just one thing, just listening to the conversation to throw out there, if you're looking for consistency, and yet there's a desire to save some of the windows, I would postulate that if you're going to take the leaded glass windows someplace to be restored, having worked in those, with those types of windows, where those sash and the glass probably could be restored, the sash are in pretty good shape on all the leaded glass, so maybe that's what gets, if you're looking to save any, maybe those are the ones you save, you replace everything else with units, and then you put a storm window on the interior or the exterior of those windows. Those are probably the most, in looking at the windows, they're the most integral as far as what they were originally installed with without being altered or rotted or modified or any of those things. I would also agree with Chairman Zelmer and Commissioner Hiller that the north side windows are ones that we normally wouldn't spend a lot of commission time on any project because it's an interior side yard and it's also past that first architectural break would be for the 6 windows on that side. So again, it's up to the commission to decide whether or not you want to allow all the windows to be replaced or some, but I would say as far as the consistency argument, if there's some historic windows that you're looking to save sash and glass, my staff recommendation would be to concentrate on the leaded glass sash and not save some double hungs and have some replacement double hungs. That doesn't seem to be congruous with other decisions you've made.
That makes good sense. How many leaded glass ones are we talking about? Is it 6?
Total of 6.
I like that suggestion.
do you have an opinion about that, Al?
the leaded glass now, is it behind the storm window?
No.
Okay, so that just has to be the way it is. It was always exposed.
Well, I think that if the leaded glass is repaired correctly,
Yeah,
that it might be able to withstand its own. I know it won't be insulated, but they're not the biggest pieces of glass. You know, they're maybe 24, 26 inches wide by 1.5 feet, 2 feet tall, depending on which windows are in. One of the things though too, 3 of those leaded glass are in a bay, so that's where it gets a little. And you could see the compaction going on and what have you. So.
Well, another thing, they would never open under any circumstance.
Absolutely,
That's
They
true.
would do it on the inside.
right. Similar to the gable window. I mean, that's when I didn't understand replacing that. Since it's an attic window, I thought, why not just leave it, you know?
Yeah, that one I could take a picture of it for you, but I didn't want to get on a ladder and go that much higher since it's above the roof. So
I don't blame you.
I'm passionate, but I'm not crazy.
Well, you're right, the leaded glass windows would never open, so an interior storm window would be
fine
a good solution to that.
Yes.
But would it be the whole window or just the sash with the glass in it?
Just the sash with the glass in it. The lower window would be a new
No. Oh.
window. But we can make the reveal of the sash the same as the upper one.
And Marvin has married, and so has Colby and Colby. They've married an old window sash with a new window sash. They've done that before, so it is possible.
Matter of fact, the job that we did at 521 Campbell Street was a Colby window. And they, at that time, Carla was pretty emphatic about, you know, what we were doing and how it was going to be done. And I said, well, these are wood windows with a Kynar type paint finish on them. And I drove by them before I talked to Mike a couple weeks ago, and they are, 10 years old, and with just a little rinsing off, they look as good as they did the day they were put in. And they don't have that caulking along the bottom and, what have you, that caused the problem when they had the capping of the aluminum.
And they're not clad, those are actually wood.
Pardon me?
Those were not clad, those were wood windows.
Correct.
Yeah.
Just don't face nail them, please.
No, they're put on with a
A
clamp.
fin, or,
Not with a fin, no.
Not with a
They're-
fan?
They're put on with it's not a clamp, it's a strap that actually is anchored to the jamb.
okay.
Put the window in, pull the strap around, nail it to the inside of the framing, and that's it. They have to be shimmed properly, that's a really important thing, but I had no callbacks on that job, so.
Good. I feel like we're coming to a bit of a consensus on that, but we do need to talk about the door itself also, the replacement door. What's the commission's feeling about proposed versus staff recommended, or what, I guess what's the church's, you have the proposed one, you've also seen Michael's,
I don't think that we would have an issue with the staff recommended door. I mean, I don't see that much difference in it, other than making sure that we get the correct size of the mullions, to what your
Yeah.
specifics were. That's a relatively easy process to do that. It's not, it's not, adding 4 panes at the top instead of 3, you can get 6 in there if you needed to or wanted to, and that's just the way they can make the doors.
Yeah.
Frames. The main thing is the thickness of the mullions, and
Yeah.
making sure that they're defined enough and pronounced enough.
so you wouldn't, the church wouldn't have a problem doing the
Oh, no,
staff
not a bit.
recommended one?
No, that could be duplicated very easily.
Okay.
Then that's a good thing.
Because I actually like the staff recommended one versus the proposed one, just the glazing going all the way to the ground, I'm not a
Yeah,
big
I
fan of,
understand,
but-
sure.
Yes.
I agree.
Does anyone else have any
No
questions
problem
or
with either
comments
one of
about that?
No?
Like it. Was there any other items that we had to look at, Michael? I think that was it, right? So, does someone want to put together a motion? I think it's important that we capture that the leaded glass sashes would be reused, and the door, I guess.
I'll try it, but you got to help me along with this.
Okay, we will.
Okay, I'll move that we approve the windows at 327 South 4th Street, the Larrabee House, as presented, with the exception that the leaded glass windows will be restored in the original framing, sash, and that the door will be used as recommended by staff.
You had also mentioned earlier, just a few minutes ago, about the gable window. Did you want to, are you allowing that to be replaced, or are you wanting that one to be restored?
I have no big feeling about it. If it were me, I would just leave it original. But I don't want to force the issue. How does anybody else feel about that gable window?
No, it's so high up. And
Yeah, again, I don't think it's for consistency, and if the church really wants to change it out, I don't see a big deal with it.
So the gable window to remain.
Try to save it.
Right.
Try.
The gable window will remain.
No.
No, actually, it could
We'll
be,
give the
allow it to
choice.
be replaced.
Allow it to be replaced.
Is that you're leaving up to the church as to whether to replace or repair?
With the gable window being, decision on the gable window being left up to the church.
You're welcome, Celeste.
Okay.
Do you want to read that back, or?
Yes, please.
Oh, please.
Motion by Commissioner Hiller to approve the windows presented, as presented, with the exception that the leaded glass will be restored in its original sash, and the door will be used as recommended by staff. The gable window will be left up to the church.
I would say the gable attic window,
Yeah.
Sure.
just to be specific.
Second.
Do we have a second?
Not me.
I'll second.
By Solomon? Okay. All righty. Hiller.
Aye.
Solomon.
Aye.
Zinke.
Aye.
Zelmer.
Aye,
Passes.
Thank you.
Okay.
very good.
Thank you.
Thank you for giving the opportunity to present our case. Appreciate it very much.
Very complete. Okay, our next case is 112 North Fifth Street.
Do you want this window?
Al may want that window.
I would take it, but it's bigger than my office.
It's a good example.
It is a good example.
It's bigger than my office. So 112 North Fifth Street, you saw this last month. This was a request for window modifications associated with an interior remodeling. Again, to refresh your memories, this residence is located in the North Geneva Historic District that's listed in the National Register of Historic Places, and is in the northern half of the local Geneva Historic District. The house was built around 1890 for the Nelson family. It was remodeled sometime between 1923 and 1935. Converted at that time into 2 apartments. The current proposal is to return it back to a single-family residence. Currently, the house has got an enclosed porch that was enclosed around 1923, and that's scheduled to remain as is. And the house has aluminum siding and then some windows that have been altered over time in the building. So just some views that you've seen before. The concern that was raised last meeting was that the north elevation, north facade, which is highly visible, has a very regular fenestration pattern, very orderly from top to bottom. Even though the windows have, some of them are original and some of them are replacements. These were examples of some of the windows. You can see the condition is, especially on the lower right, you can see some of the deterioration on the sash themselves. These also were ones that had a replacement channel and jam liner put in. You see on the left photo there with the metal jam liner. So these windows also have been altered with this retrofit system that was common in the 30s and 40s and 50s, excuse me. So in July, this was the submittal that was proposed for the floor plan, and the floor plan itself to turn back to a single-family home was requiring some relocation of windows. We didn't really have elevations at that time. The applicants have worked very hard in the month since, and they have come back with a lot more information. They have 2 concepts for the first floor. The highlighted floor plan A is the preferred plan, and so I've highlighted everything associated with that preferred plan. Plan B is one they're willing to consider, but it's not the applicant's first choice. The second floor going along with the proposed first floor plans, it's the same whether it's concept A or concept B. So the elevations that have been submitted now, the upper view is the existing conditions, and the lower 2 are option A and option B. One of the things that was noted in the discussion last month was that not only did the windows appear to be very orderly, but they appeared to be generally in where you would have expected them to be historically. However, in the month looking at it, and after that meeting, after that discussion, one of the things we've realized is the first windows may have been relocated in the 1930s in that remodeling, because they do not align over the basement window. If you look at that upper level, you can see the first windows on the left do not align over the window, and those were some of the windows that were being considered for alteration or elimination in the original plan. So option A and option B moves those windows to where they are more centrally located over the basement window, which is probably likely. And here's just a little graphic to kind of show you what the probable conditions were. based on other homes of the period. Also, what's interesting in looking at the field notes is the middle bay of windows appears to be replacement windows. They're wider than the rest of the windows in the house. So again, having some of this field information, having the elevation you asked for really kind of revealed a few more details about the house that suggests there was some remodeling going on in the 30s. So what's being proposed is to move the windows. These are concept A and concept B, and removing the aluminum siding off the rear of the house and using that to patch the replacement window areas, so you'll have the same texture. What's interesting about this proposal is that replacement and repair of siding less than 10% of a facade does not require a permit. And by the calculations, the elevations are approximately 794.25 square feet of area, and the proposal A would only be replacing 68 square feet of aluminum siding, where option B would be 71 square foot. Again, both of those are under the 10% that even requires a permit for siding maintenance. The contractor can speak more to this, but he is confident that there's enough salvage off of the rear of the building that they can accomplish this with this very minimal patching. For reference, we allowed this at 416 Ford Street, right down the street from this house a few years ago, where they were replacing through-wall air conditioners. And we allowed them to do that on a temporary basis. I did want to make a note that the applicants have made it very clear that their long-term plan is to remove all the aluminum siding off the house over time, but the budget right now does not allow for them to undertake that project at this point. So the idea is that this is a temporary fix that would meet their budget and would satisfy our siding policy and our permitting requirements, but is not the long-term preference of the owners. They are proposing to replace the windows on that side now, again, based on the modification of some of them. This is a Marvin Integrity window with Ultrex cladding, which has been approved in the district before. And again, as I mentioned, and I'll go back to that for a second. You can see, again, that the windows in the middle bay appear to have been replaced because they are wider than the other windows in the home, and the windows at the far right bay are smaller than the original window openings. But again, if you look at their proposal on either A or B, the windows are regular in width except for at the kitchen where they have two options. It's a double window over the sink in option A, or a single wide large window over the sink in option B. Again, reaching over a sink, the smaller windows are probably easier to operate than one big large window, and the smaller paired windows are the preference. Also, the window above, which is in the bathroom, is being proposed to be shorter than the other windows, but again, in the same vertical alignment as the historic windows were. So at this point, I'm assuming Ben is going to take over. And so Ben Hines is the contractor, and he can provide additional details for you or clarify any other questions that I may have missed. Ben?
Yep.
Forward, backward. This is a pointer here for if you need to point to anything.
Okay. I don't really have a whole lot to add to, he pretty much gave you the whole rundown. But we worked really hard to come up with a solution that met both the new interior plan for the home and kept with the consistency of the current symmetrical layout, and tried to go even further to propose what we believe was the original location of the windows to kind of create a very uniform look along the house.
I think you've accomplished that. I like the result. I think it was a good solution.
Do you have an opinion of A versus B?
I like A.
George, do you have any opinions?
I didn't see the original, but I mean, the way this is laid out seems to be very logical and, seems to, present itself well. I prefer A with the doubles.
Yeah, and I do too. I am assuming that you are requesting on taking these old windows out and replacing them
Yes.
with the Marvin windows.
Yeah.
What is the condition and how old are the windows that are in the building right now?
The existing windows are all in kind of varying condition. Most of them do function, but they have already all been replaced with the retrofit systems as is. And just due to relocating them, our hope was to replace it to a consistent unit across the whole side of the house in case, a few of them are not able to be reused, and then everything is cohesive.
Just to elaborate on that, you can't really tell with the bright lights on, but these are very thin windows, again, very typical of the 1890s and the early 1920s. They're a very thin sash frame. So the routing out has really altered the integrity of the side stiles on these windows. The other thing you can't see, and I was hoping it would point out, but if you look, you can see a little bit right here, but there's a lot of this condensation and deterioration of the wood on all the lower sash on these windows, and part of that I think is because the material is so thin, the sash material. You can also, if it was darker in here, you would see on this window there's the same thing, and all the window pictures that have been submitted have that same deterioration condition at all of the sash. So I have not seen these up close like I've seen the St. Mark's windows, but just from what you can see between the combination of the track and that common moisture issue on every single sash, the lower corner, I'm guessing that almost all the bottom rail are probably punky.
So can you repeat that? You're saying that these windows are from 1910-ish, something like that? And they were retrofitted and they were, parts of them were thinned out?
Yeah, what happened with windows, again, when we've talked about windows in the past, your windows from the 1850s to the early 1890s were a much heavier sash. That's why we've looked at some of the sash details on replacement windows to make sure they meet those historic proportions. As you got into the 1890s and then into the 1920s, everything was thinning down to get more light into the home. So these are a very thin sash material. They're not the heavier sash you would have seen 20 years earlier than this house was built. So then in the combination of that factor, glass was also a little bit lighter as you got in the 1890s glass manufacture, so you could have these larger panes of glass and not need as much sash material to support the pane itself. So it's all this improving technology. But then they came in, and because these sashes are so thin, they had to route it out to get these metal tracks in. It's the same thing we saw at St. Mark's on those second floor windows.
So that was done about when?
Those were real popular between the 1930s and the 1950s. Some were done as late as the 60s, but it fell out of favor because there were other things to do in the 60s and 70s to retrofit, and that was very labor intensive to do this. And oftentimes the metal bent after a short time, so they kind of got a bad reputation over time. So the combination is that, again, not only do they route out the side of the sash to put these metal tracks in, they also route out the jamb to recess those metal tracks in. So when you see these metal tracks in these old windows, you can take them out and restore them, but you're doing a lot of material replacements, a lot of labor to do that. So, and again,
Originally, they would have been a weight and pulley system as
Correct.
well, and to recreate that, we don't have the parts to do it, so.
Okay, that answers that question. Thank you.
Were you looking at something, this is the north side, right? Were you looking at something on the south? Were you changing anything, or did that just change with the change of the,
The south side, that double window, which we've determined is very obviously was
yeah,
added later and isn't,
Yeah, you're gonna
that
take
that
that
is
one
being
out.
eliminated.
Okay.
Yeah.
that also would be less than 10% of material replacement on that facade.
okay.
So you'll take that out and you'll just replace it with the siding?
Yes.
So there'll be no opening there at all?
No opening there at all.
I
Yeah.
see, okay.
And the windows on that face will be changed out also?
No, none of the windows on that whole side of the house
Oh,
will be
okay.
touched, yeah.
Okay, that's fine. I just want to clarify the scope of what.
Yeah, no, the only windows that are being altered or replaced are the north side
North
and some windows in the rear, which aren't visible.
And then can you go back to the plan? The only other, there was some discussion last time about the door within the the main door that you're changing out, but I think since you're not changing the
I think it was determined because it was not visible through
visible
the
that we
porch.
weren't gonna
It's
Yeah.
an
worry
enclosed
about
porch.
that.
It
Correct.
was-
The
yeah.
commission didn't have a concern with that last month.
Right.
Does anybody else have, do you have any questions or?
No, I'm good.
Okay, can we get a motion to approve this?
Okay,
I'll look at you, George.
okay, that's fine. The motion to approve as presented the proposal for 112 North Fifth Street with the replacement of windows as shown in Plan A
On the north wall.
on the north side.
Can I get a second from someone?
Wait, don't we need to also reference the changes in the door position and the window position on the porch, that's part of
I think
this?
that was part of it last month.
But we did,
I think if you're silent on it, the plan would stand as it was submitted. I think the
Oh, okay.
thing you do want to identify is the south window. If you're going to specifically talk about the north elevation, I think you do need to identify what you're doing, allowing on the south side.
okay.
So we have to include this south window?
The elimination of the south window.
And include the removal and non-replacement of the window on the south side.
That's a double window, right?
Yes.
At lower south elevation? Okay.
Yes.
Second.
Can I get a second from someone?
Second.
Okay.
Hiller?
Aye.
Solomon?
Aye.
Zinke?
Aye,
Zelmer?
Aye.
Passes.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
all right. Look forward to seeing how it looks.
We're excited too.
I bet you are.
Six 26 Fulton.
So the case before you on 626 Fulton Street is a exterior renovation that consists of some composite siding installation, a new front door, and a single replacement window. This project is located in the far southwest corner of the Central Geneva Historic District, listed in the National Register of Historic Places, and also in the far southwest corner of the local Geneva Historic District. The house was built in 1941, as evidenced in the information provided in your agenda packet. It was built for Leopold and Agnes Johnson, who Leopold and his first wife and second wife lived in the home until the early 1990s. So they were 50-year occupants of the home. In 1993, the house was sold and was then remodeled and expanded with several additions. And the house was sided with aluminum siding, well, I'll say synthetic siding, because I can't remember if it's aluminum or vinyl right now. But it was sided with siding completely. So now the questions come back, or the applications come back to do some renovation work, and we don't allow composite siding to be put back on. So the request has been to install a LP Smart Side on the home, and the question before the commission then would be what to do with the portions that are visible yet on the historic portion of the home. One of the reasons I put all four of these pictures on one slide is so you can get a very good idea of what you see of this house from the four corners of the property. Technically, the two sides of the 1941 house that are still somewhat visible are the east side and the north side, and the upper portion of the west side. However, as you can see from these photographs, that the east side, even though most of that's original, is very, very difficult to see. So primarily what the consideration may be as far as siding goes is what occurs on the north facade of the original 1941 house and how it's best made to synthesize the entire exterior. So a couple of things to that case is I've included the list of proposed work, and the items in red are the items of the proposed work that the HPC actually has some comment or jurisdiction over. The only thing that I have noted is that it's being requested to use LP Smart Side, but it does not identify which texture, and we do not allow the cedar texture in the historic district. We require that it be a smooth finish that replicates a historic painted clapboard building. If you note, the details are very, the information is very detailed, that the existing window and door trim, soffit and fascia and frieze boards are all intended to be left in place on the building, so it'd just be a matter of replacing the siding. And the proposal, again, because it is covered, some of it, the proposal is to repair the damaged trim as needed. So again, that falls within the parameters of our siding policy. The other question would be is that it's calling out to have a 6 7/8 inch reveal on the horizontal lap siding. At this point, we have no idea. That I have not been able to uncover any historic photographs of this house from 1941 or after, so we don't know what the original exposure of the siding was on the original home. That may be something that the commission, as part of their approval, would want to have the siding removed and see if the siding was taken off in 1993, the historic siding, or if not, if it exists, if you want to match that existing exposure with whatever's put back. The front door is not a historic door. It appears to be from 1993 or later. So what's being proposed is a fiberglass 6-panel door that would have a painted finish that is in keeping with the architectural style of a colonial revival home. So again, we have not we've not rejected fiberglass doors as entry doors within the historic district. And it is also being called for a smooth fiberglass and not the wood grain fiberglass. So again, it's going to have the look of a traditional painted historic door. They are replacing one window, and I apologize that I don't know which window is the dining room window, but I assumed that, but I wasn't sure. So, so the important thing to understand here is that our window policy requires simulated divided lights. However, in this whole house, it has interior grills. So, since it's only one window that's being replaced, it does not seem, to my opinion, that it makes sense to follow the stringent expectation of our window policy, but it would be more appropriate to do what's being proposed here and match the window to the rest of the windows that were put in the 1993 era. So this is, again, a window that you've approved before within the historic district. It's a Marvin window, aluminum-clad, double-hung window. It will be in the color white to match the other windows, so it will be consistent with what has been installed throughout the house. So with that, I probably have missed some details. If you would like to, Mr. Dickerson, come and fill in anything I've missed or answer any questions.
You got it all.
This will take you backwards and this will take you forwards.
All right. Well, do you all have any questions?
Well, what happens when you remove the aluminum and you find out the original siding is still
We
there?
have removed some of the aluminum, and all that's there is the sheathing that's nailed to the studs.
Ah,
I've got pictures if you'd like to see it.
Oh, yeah, I think we would.
yeah.
So they
I didn't know
removed
you
it when
had
they
all
put the
these.
siding
Some of
up.
these pictures are kind of, oh, that's Mary's old car. She hasn't had that in 2 years. Anyway.
So you've been thinking about this a while?
We've been thinking about this project, yes.
Yes.
Some of this redundant to what you see, but they are in the sequence to get a view of the angle. Needless to say, there's no original siding under the garage addition because that's new. And
Yeah.
under the front portico that comes out, that's all built new in '93 as well.
Okay.
There was a small portico that came out because you can see the foundation, but the top part, the whole thing was constructed by Bob Nelson in 1993. So the last three pictures there are, get to where the sheathing is. We did it just below the dining room window there on the right. We have one of those little, here it is.
Behind the bushes there.
Yes, yes, sir, you can't see it now unless
Right.
you climb over the bush.
Well, no. Now, there is a slim chance that when you do the rest of the house, you may find that that's an anomaly. So, if it does, will you call up Michael and ask what to do next?
No?
No? You're just gonna run off with the aluminum and recycle it and not tell anybody?
No, we're going to do what we've presented
what
today, and
you've proposed.
we're going to do the plan that we've presented.
Right.
I think one of the important things that Mr. Dickerson has pointed out, and this was one of my questions, we couldn't find historic photographs, I was trying to figure out how much of that original portico, or how much of that portico is original.
Yes.
And he's answered the question, it's a 1993. So again, the north facade has been heavily altered,
Yeah.
which was something I couldn't document in any of the files I had. So basically what you're looking at is the form of the 1941 house, and I'm assuming the attic half window is original to the, that wasn't put in 93.
We just restored that.
Yeah. So,
We put a whole new roof on last year.
George, any comments?
Not offhand.
We had planned to do, this is the LP Smart, the cedar finish, but you say we can't do that.
we don't allow that in the district.
Well, it'd be easier to put on the smooth than rather than move the house, so, out of the district.
I'd say it's rather straightforward. I have absolutely no problem with the window to match. That makes sense.
Yeah,
It does.
that's an original 1940, I thought it was 1940, 41.
And the Marvin that you're replacing it with is a perfect match, you say?
Yeah.
So with that, and as long as you're willing to go along with the, you're going to do the smart siding with the smooth side out,
Yep.
I have no problem with anything.
You know, there's more, I mean, we're placing all the gutters and downspouts as well, that'll all be white, so it'll really pick up the house, it'll look wonderful.
Oh, absolutely.
We're just down the street from you.
I know.
And
You
from
took
you
out a
as
whole
well,
lot of
Paul.
bushes along the side there, too.
Yeah, we've done a lot of landscaping. Yeah, a lot of landscaping.
Opens it up.
Are you going to use the same reveal that's on the aluminum right now? In terms of how wide the
No,
siding is?
no, that's about 4 inches, this will be 6 7/8.
6 7/8?
Yep. That's the LP Smart comes in 16-foot lengths and more cost efficient. But you don't approve budgets, do you?
No.
I was curious about all your questions about how much the church was spending. I didn't know that
Well,
that
we
was-
were looking at the difference between the two different
Options.
options.
Replace.
Yes.
Repair or replace.
Yeah.
That's really what our view was on that one.
Okay.
The, I don't see any issues with this. Caroline, do you have anything?
Changing the reveal on the house is going to make the house look significantly different.
gonna
If
look
it's
wonderful.
4 now, and it'll be 6 then, that will be a significant
We're
change.
changing the color as well, it'll be a lighter color,
Oh.
and with white trim. It'll be very handsome. There's an old house across the street that has a reveal that's actually bigger than 6 inches.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, I'll have to swing by and look at the house across the street. I looked at your house this afternoon.
Good.
Okay. That's okay? The reveal?
Yeah, I actually don't have an issue with the reveal. Again, this 1940s colonial revival, we're going to a wider exposure. It was more of a modern take on the colonial revival, so I don't see that necessarily as being a concern. If it was a 1902 colonial revival, we might have a concern.
Okay. All right. Good.
Well, if not, I don't have any issues with it, so if someone can put together a motion.
Sure. Move to approve the project at 626 Fulton Street as presented. Is there anything that we're altering from the presentation?
Noting the siding texture.
Oh, yeah, with the hardy board or siding, smooth siding.
It's LP Smart.
Smart siding
LP Smart, yeah.
I'll be smart.
with smooth side out.
Got it.
In the door and the window as proposed.
Second. Okay, second?
Sure.
Okay, so,
All righty. Hiller.
Aye.
Solomon.
aye?
Ziggy.
Aye.
Zelman.
Aye.
Passes.
Sorry you had to sit through the whole night to.
Well, I'm a member of St. Mark's, and I've contributed to that reservation, so I was interested in what you were approving. By the way, we open our windows every day
Do
to
you?
get the cool air at night, and then in the day, we shut the windows,
Right.
we may or may not need to turn on the air because we've retained the cool air, so.
Well, that's what we do too, but it appears from my friends that you and I are peculiar in terms of windows.
Really, I didn't think so. Did you teach at Coltrap?
Yes, I did.
Yeah, our daughter went there. She may or not have been in your class, Annie Dickerson, but
Oh, I think she was one of my students.
Yeah.
What is she doing?
she is now doing cancer research at Northwestern Medicine.
Oh my gosh, isn't that magnificent?
Yeah.
Oh,
She's married and has a little girl, Genevieve.
does she? Genevieve?
Genevieve.
How nice is that? Oh, lovely, lovely.
And her husband's a teacher. He teaches at North Central, he teaches at his alma mater, Columbia College, and
Wonderful.
he also illustrates children's books, and
Does he?
he's
Oh,
got about 10 or 12 books published.
I love to hear about my former students. I just love it. Thank you for saying that.
Well, you're welcome.
Okay.
Thank you all for your support.
Thank you.
Mr. Dickerson,
I'll look, I'll,
you may have those. Would you like me to autograph them?
Signed originals?
signed originals.
Okay.
you.
Great, thank you.
Okay, bye-bye.
Good night. Secretary's report?
I do have a few things.
Good. Nice to
Goes so much easier when everybody does the right thing.
Yeah.
Commissioners, I sometimes, I'm bringing this to you because this is something I did as an administrative review, and I got to thinking as I was getting ready to release it that maybe I should have brought to the commission. So I'm actually looking for your direction on this for the future. This is a project, again, in the far south eastern corner of the historic district. It's 421 South First Street. You probably all know this shingle English Revival building. Anyway, they came forward, and this is on the south side, which is on the driveway side. And if you're coming from the north, even driving or going towards the north, driving or walking, this is the south side, and it's kind of hard to see because it's tucked back in. But this is a door on the south side, and I determined administratively it was not highly visible. And so if I'm in error, you may slap my hands. They came in with a very simple request to put a shed roof over that doorway to protect them from the ice and snow and rain that's falling off. And I looked at it as being a removable and not highly visible from the exterior, so I've approved that. And I got to thinking that, it's kind of one of those gray areas in the permit review matrix, so I kind of wanted to get your blessing that I did not overstep my reach, and that this is acceptable to the commission, that this was an approval.
Where do you have to be able to view that from the street?
If you're walking and you stand at the corner of their property and you really look hard at it, you can see that door.
And squint.
But again, there's a lot of things going on First Street there. So typically when you're walking in that area, you're watching traffic, you're watching the corner that you just crossed or whatever, about to cross. So they're one house off the corner. And again, in my looking at it, it wasn't highly visible, but it is down a driveway that, is kind of got an open vista a little bit. And so I just thought afterwards, so you can kind of see here, Al, that if you're standing way over here on the corner, if this sidewalk extended over here, and you stand here and you look back in, you can see the door back over there. But it's not highly visible. They're trying to do something very minimalistic as far as the materials. It's going to be staying the same as the siding, and it's going to have the same asphalt shingles that's on the rest of the house. And so, like I said, I approved it, and then got to thinking that maybe I should have brought this to the commission, but this is one of those small projects, so,
This is the south facade,
south facade.
so the round window is the street, is that?
This round window is on the south side, it's in the entry, it's in this little entry
Yeah, so
foyer.
so it's even farther, it's not towards the front of the building even.
No, it's in the back half of the
Yeah.
south facade.
But I'm confused. The front and side of the house that we see in the first two pictures is one color, and then this wall is a darker color.
These two pictures, the upper, are from our survey that I've been working on, so they're 2 years old.
Oh, I see.
This is what it looks like currently. It's been painted dark.
I see, okay. Okay,
It's not heavy shadows.
okay.
Okay.
Thank you. I think that's fine.
I don't see a problem with it in approving things that are in the back third of the, and,
And that you have to squint from the corner of the property to even
Yeah.
get an idea where it is.
Well, I usually try to make pretty good judgment with that, but like I said, this one, we've been hit with a lot of permits, and I was kind of rushing through things. I wanted to make sure that I hadn't, again, overstepped. So the other things that are on my list here somewhere, where'd my agenda go? I'm sure you are all aware of the mill race in Charette having been completed. Some of you came, some of you participated, some of you've probably been watching the progress of that. The city council voted last night at 6-4 to approve going ahead with the entitlement phase. Excuse me. So I just wanted you to be aware of the charrette. So I'm sure there'll be continued discussions on that. Also,
does that need to go through zoning also, or is it's gonna be a PUD, right?
it will most likely be a PUD. And there will be portions of it that will go through the Plan Commission. There will also be a portion of it if they proceed still with the removal of the historic landmark blacksmith shop, that would come to the HBC for discussion and review.
Really?
Yes, because a demolition permit still requires, for a landmark, requires a public hearing and a review by the HBC. Other questions about mill race?
Can I comment on that from last night?
Sure.
Okay. I am flabbergasted that everybody who was at the meeting of the public were concerned about how tall the building will be, its mass, and its overall size. And yet, by a 6-4 approval, it appears that the our representatives are not concerned about the building being 60 feet tall and filling up the entire lot with wall. So I don't understand what it was they were actually doing last night. Did they say that what was presented by Chaudine and the Charrette is exactly what's going to happen? If they're going to be making changes, how can they do that now that they have approved it?
I think if you were watching or were at the meeting, Mayor Burns addressed that pretty clearly, that, and I think Director DeGroot also commented on it, that the entitlements that were granted are the upper limits of what can be done there under the, through the charrette process and what the city
So that's
council
the upper
granted.
limits.
Those are the upper limits.
Okay,
So
but
they,
go ahead.
they talked about the height, and again, I believe a couple of the aldermen asked the question, is that mean that it's going to be 60 feet tall? And they said, no, that's the maximum that's being granted. Just like zoning has, by right zoning has certain height restrictions, but it doesn't mean everybody's building to that height. I think, again, I don't remember all the details of it, but they identified the number of dwelling units as a maximum. They identified the idea of some of the waterfront improvements as part of the entitlements and some public access, access points to the site. Again, but all those things are still going to be going through Engineering and Plan Commission, and again, as far as historic landmark building, that would still come back to this commission for review and public input.
Well, that's what I thought I understood until one of the alderwomen said, what happens if we decide that 60 feet is too tall and we want to make it 59 feet? Will that be okay? And Mr. DeGroot said, probably, but I'm not sure. So that made me wonder why, if 1 foot difference was maybe okay, but maybe not okay, how can they say this is the upper limits and that they may choose something less?
Well, I think what, again, and I'm not trying to speak for anybody who spoke last night, but my understanding was it's hard to put a quantitative number because, again, we don't know what the building's looking like or what's going into it. So can the building be depressed, enough into the ground to get the parking to work, and maybe that ends up with a 54-foot-high building, but maybe it has to be a 59.5-foot building with floodplain or bedrock or whatever might be on the site. So I think, to get to the next phase with the entitlements and the, some more in-depth engineering and some of those elements are going to answer some of those questions. Again, it was a fairly compressed design period, so I'm sure they didn't work out all the engineering details and, how steep the ramp can be to get to the lower level of the parking garage. It's going to set how far into the ground it goes, et cetera, et cetera. So I think that's what he was hedging on, that people talking specific numbers at this point, whether it's 40 feet or 59.5 feet, that's hard to tell until the plan is flushed out more.
These are just the parameters.
So, yeah, so it's, again, the maximum parameters is what was being granted last night.
Well, I hope that yes, I hope the building, the whole concept becomes significantly smaller than what their upper parameters are.
Like that. What will be curious is right now the entire property is listed as is designated as a landmark, not just the building. Everybody keeps referring to the building. So right now at this point, I would assume as long as there is a landmark designation of the property, that the commission's going to actually have some input on that, just as we had on, say, the Campbell Row townhomes.
Mm-hmm.
One shot.
It'll probably come as a PUD as a one-shot type of thing, yes. Separate from a demolition request. If the demolition request comes first and then they ask for a de-designation of the property, then the commission's probably not going to look at it. But if the building is still there when this comes forward for review, it would fall under the purview of the Historic Preservation Commission to have some input that would feed into the Plan Commission's decision-making.
Who will see it first, Plan Commission or us?
Again, if it stays, if the entire property stays as a designated property before it goes into the PUD process, it would come before the commission, and our comments feed into the Plan Commission.
To the Plan Commission, I see, okay. Because at the present moment, the approved development deconstructs the mill race and uses some of the limestone blocks in some sort of fashion.
Any other comments or questions about that project or that process?
More to come.
I would say, again, if you have specific questions about particular details, I would direct those to Director DeGroot, because, again, I am not as closely involved with that project as he is. So, also, just, again, I'm sure you all are aware of this, but the South Geneva Historic District was the recommendation of the commission was overturned by the City Council of a vote of 3 to 5. It did not achieve the 2/3 majority needed to ratify the commission's recommendation. Also, at the meeting on July 8th, the proposal or the request was made to appeal the HPC's decision on 428 Ford Street, which was a denial of a demolition request. George Stazen, Commissioner Stazen, aptly represented the commission, and the city council supported the recommendation of the commission and did not overturn the denial of the demolition on that project.
Do we have any idea what's going to happen next with the property?
I have not had any communication since that evening with the applicants.
Okay.
So outside of that, I will be resuming 5-minute field guides. We're back in our normal meeting area. I will be resuming those next month. If there's any topics any of you are interested in, please send those my way. I've got several coming up, but I'm always looking for topics that might be of interest to the commission. Outside of that, that ends my report, Chairman Zelmer.
Great, thank you.
I have some new business
From the commission, so that.
from the commission. Okay. Listening to lots and lots of conversations when we were discussing the South Historic District, there were so very many people who commented about how onerous the process of coming before the HPC was. People going back to the 1990s, talking about horror stories of their treatment by HPC members. I would like to suggest that we put together a document that can be given to the applicants when they are finished with this procedure with us, asking them to make some sort of statement about their satisfaction or dissatisfaction.
Survey.
A survey, kind of like a survey. A simple kind of thing, not anything all that complicated, but maybe with a few questions asking for specific details.
We currently do send out a customer satisfaction survey after most projects, and it doesn't have maybe some of the questions you're looking for, but it's a kind of a general customer satisfaction survey, and we do send that out on a regular basis because that actually goes to some of my performance evaluation. So that does get done already, and there is an opportunity for people to add additional comments. I will say that in the majority and the high majority of cases, we get very complimentary responses back on working with the commission and with staff.
I thought that one, when you put out that one thing about how many projects we had approved and disapproved and so on, I mean, that spoke volumes. We had only not approved one.
Right, for
Well,
that
I
1
mean,
year.
Well, in a decade of over 1,200 projects, it's less than 1% have not been approved by the commission. So I think it does demonstrate that the commission works very hard, at least in my tenure, and I believe in my predecessor's tenure, to make projects successful. And that's, again, I know that it's been characterized that I've overstepped bounds perhaps in some cases, but my job really is to try to bring cases complete to the commission so that you can make a determination based on full facts. So my job is to continue to educate applicants and to assist them in putting together the most complete package possible so that you can make a determination.
I have one question. Are you done, Carolyn?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay. The house at 6th and Franklin, was that the one Augustine was putting that bump out in the back? Did we approve some kind of a very plain detail on that, didn't we? Because right now it has nothing on it.
I believe the final determination was to eliminate the band and everything and just make it a clean, simple bay.
Oh, is that right? Okay,
I
that's what it
remember that.
is.
Oh, yeah, that's.
But I thought, because I remember there was the false window, there was the
Right.
band, there was all kinds of different, and I in my head, I thought there was, the final result was just a simple element on there.
There was no other place in the house that had banding on it.
Okay.
It was all planar wall surfaces. That was kind of what everybody finally landed on, that it would be simple, better to make it simple than to add a detail that didn't exist somewhere else in the house.
Okay.
But Al, I agree with you. I think it would have looked better if it had something.
Oh, yeah, I don't like the way it looks,
No.
but I'm thinking it'll get covered eventually, but,
Well, if they ever sell that lot, yes. Yeah.
Well, they'll sell that lot. It'll happen sooner or later.
Well, yeah, and I suppose that's true. That's true. Okay. May I ask one last question?
The floor is the commission, so up to the
Okay.
chair.
Michael, in the South Historic District, the property that the Atwater House is on now, is that now 2 parcels or 3? Atwater House and the lot that Mr. Yee bought, which I thought was an L-shaped, which I thought was 1 parcel?
There's 2 owners. Mr. Yee owns the dogleg or the L-shaped lot, and my understanding, that has 3 parcel index numbers. But again, to subdivide it, it would have to go through a subdivision process.
So the area which has been clear-cut of all of the pre-settlement oak trees, which happened this week, is that going to be 1 house there, 2 houses, or 3?
That's the proposed site of Mr. Yee's house.
Okay, so he's putting 1 house on this lot, as far as you know?
As far as I know, yes.
I see, okay.
I think the intention is to come in eventually and subdivide, but I am not aware of any
Right, right.
actions on that front yet.
Okay. And since I thought we had a tree preservation ordinance, how is it that all those trees were allowed to be cut down?
Doesn't it kick
Would
in
you know?
after
It's
only
the
construction,
permit?
right?
It's under 1.5 acres. The tree preservation ordinance only impacts properties that are 1.5 acres or larger.
Okay, that's a problem with that ordinance. Okay, thank you. Has anybody gone down there to look at that?
Oh, I took a picture of it the other day.
Yeah, it looks appalling, just appalling. And I think it's terrible that an architect can't figure out how to build a house around the trees. But that's my point. Okay,
Okay.
thank you.
Anything more? Or George, anything from you?
No,
Anything
good.
from the public?
Oh, they're
Speak
not
up.
here. Thank you.
Okay. And then can I get a motion to adjourn?
Adjourn.
Okay.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Bye.
Any opposed? No?
No,
That's it.
we're out of here.
We're adjourned.
That's all, folks.